Recommended by Malice in Wonderland via Discord. When it comes to anime from Bones, the studio has since at least 2004 with the original Fullmetal Alchemist put out consistently great anime series. Whether it be the mainstream successes of My Hero Academia and Mob Psycho 100, or the less known releases like Wolf's Rain or Blast of Tempest, they're a studio that always seems to impress. So what happens when Bones tackles a series from the original creator of Trigun? Leonardo Watch has moved to Hell Salem's Lot, a city you may know as the former New York City, but is now overrun by alien creatures who migrated through a mysterious portal which opened up over the city years ago. But before moving to Hell Salem's Lot, Leonardo Watch acquired the all-seeing Eye of the Gods, but the price he paid was his sister's vision. To figure out how to get his sister's sight back, he heads to the hellish city to find answers. But when Leo by complete accident joins Libra, he may have put himself one step closer to getting his sister's eyesight back. This is Blood Blockade Battlefront. From the studio that brought you anime like My Hero Academia, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Noragami, and Cowboy Bebop, the movie, Blood Blockade Battlefront is produced by the prove-it entity Bones. It adapts the 33-chapter novel of the same name by Yasuhiro Naito, who you may know for being the creator of the Watershed Trigun series. The anime itself is directed by Rie Matsumoto, who has directed Kyoso Giga and worked a lot on the Precure series. It's 12 episodes with a special last episode running over 40 minutes and is available on Funimation now, both subbed and dubbed.
The all-seeing eyes of the gods, huh? I've heard that whoever possesses them can gaze backward into the past, and even peer into the future.
To start off, there are two series that for whatever reason came to mind when I watched the first episode of this anime. One of them being Gantz, and that's because both take place in large cities with similar settings and feature crazy fights with alien creatures, great action, etc. The second one isn't even an anime, and that's Men in Black. But I found myself comparing how characters are written and the personalities more than I did its setting and alien creatures, even though it's obvious that Men in Black inspired this anime on some sort of level. Now, in my opinion at least, that is some mighty fine company to be in. But Blood Blockade simply shares those self-imposed distinctions and is wholly its own story and setting. There is already a lot of interesting story within its anime, and it just so happens that it's its setting, Hell Salem's Lot, the former New York City. One day, a giant gateway opened up which unleashed a plethora of alien life into New York City. This is a small part of Blood Blockade in the grand scheme of the show, but an important one all the same. I like how this anime has such a rich history without actually having to explain it all. And that's because, for one, a lot of people know the history of New York, and you kind of see how it's changed within this unique universe. But, in many ways, it is no different from the normal New York City, like when the Irish immigrated to the city in the early 1900s. As for the story itself, it's a combination of being episodic while still having a clear story thread you can follow. And I would say some of its best episodes are one where it doesn't focus much on the main story and is more episodic. An example is episode 6, which features one of my favorite characters, Nedge, which I'll explain later why I like him so much. But this is where Blood Blockade sees a lot of success in its storytelling and pacing. Characters and stories are allowed to flow and breathe on their own without there being too much urgency in the story. These are the kinds of anime I like most, where the pacing is not too slow to drag, but it's also not too fast where I miss important details or can't follow as well without some kind of guide. An example of how well the main story is paced is in its main story thread with Mary and William Macbeth. If the show solely focused on their story, there wouldn't be room for these other characters to tell theirs. And I think that is because of the show's setup as well. It seems very obvious it's not supposed to be this one and done story, but one that sets up characters to be used later in the series. Examples to back that statement up is, well, the ending for season 1, and another example is how they use their characters and how they are introduced. Why give Nedge an episode dedicated to him if he's only gonna be in one episode? Well, that's because I foresee him being in the next season of the show. But the obvious one is Leonardo Watch's sister being a huge sign that this series isn't done quite yet. Also the fact that there's a season 2 out right now, and that it's a long-running manga series too. Those kind of help.
Hi there!
Blood Blockade is bolstered primarily by its diverse cast of characters. Leonardo Watch, the unsure main character of the series, Mary and William Macbeth, who have a really heartfelt and satisfying conclusion to their journey, and even smaller side characters like Zap and Chain's interesting, also pseudo kind of romance relationship they got going on. It's a little quirky, but very interesting. But while the cast is huge, there are some that will obviously stand out, and some that will get lost in the mix for different reasons. I want to shine a spotlight on a character that I mentioned before, but a character that I think had a good spotlight, but only one episode dedicated to him, and that's Nedge. Nedge is a lovable little alien creature that can't be hurt and feels no pain no matter what you do to him. But his other defense is that if taken enough punishment, he will release spores, which causes memory loss and for the people who are breathing them in to pass out. Other things I like about him, like his quirks and mannerisms and how he loves cheeseburgers, and even when Leo was caught in the spores, they still meet again and become friends again. It's a nice little story and develops a character that isn't even in season 1 again, outside of being in the background a couple more times. That's an example of how this show develops a non-important side character. How it develops main characters like Leonardo Watch or William Macbeth is even more impactful and more heartfelt. As an example, William Macbeth's progression from season 1 is simply delightful. His relationship with his sister Mary is one that is extremely heartfelt and has a lot of weight to it, something that I really personally appreciated. Mary does everything for William. She's his shield, his guardian angel, and she can't live without William. William is this character who has this extremely gifted ability he was blessed with that made Mary feel so less than compared to William. But William never uses his gift in front of her, really at all, because he doesn't want Mary to feel bad about it. Their relationship is just so adorable and so relatable and human and so well written that you can't help but feel something when seeing their story play out to completion.
Even a normal doofus like me can become friends with a cute girl.
What?
Nothing.
New York, a city with so much history, and that history is on display in this anime. It's a beautiful city, and Bones really nails the look and feel of it. Complexly crafted structures with decorations and designs, alleys with potholes, garbage and graffiti, run-down buildings, and a cafe full of background detail. If you are worried about how New York is depicted here, don't worry. It's fairly faithful, all things considered, and I've been to New York maybe like 2 times, so take that with a grain of salt, but it has a different but familiar feeling to it as well, since the aliens that inhabit it are very destructive, and many of the buildings are in a state of disrepair, some of them even destroyed. It's a unique touch, also one the real New York is very well used to as well. And as for character designs, they look great. Some characters remind me of the X-Men, like Klaus, and some remind me of past Bone works, like with Zap. But it shows a lot of variety because, I mean, if you look at Shane, for example, who has this sleek black, very Japanese aesthetic to her, then look at William Macbeth, it's so different. And that's why I think this show's look really stands out, as it's so not anime sometimes, if that makes sense. I guess that when you look at the setting, New York, they have a more American look to them, and so because of that, the show is distinct in its presentation. It's an anime, no doubt, but it looks like an anime if an anime was set in America, to put it as simply as possible.
What's up? Getting ready to die, dickhead?
Not even close, you evil she-bitch. There's a 2-ton dry cleaner's truck on Gilda Street. Track it. Yeah.
Before this, I'll admit I wasn't a believer in Bones really at all. I watched a lot of MHA. I really loved the Fullmetal Alchemist series, both the original and its remake, the Cowboy Bebop movie, and a couple of their other shows. But nothing outside of that never really stood out to me. Blood Blockade changed all of that. Suddenly, when Bones is mentioned, I'm excited and I want to see that anime. That's because this anime instilled hope because of one word, and that word is depth. There is so much to this show's animation, from the way the facial expressions are so well animated and unique, to the weighted combat that feels impactful, especially at the end of this season when things get extra crazy. Even things like flashbacks where certain characters use their psychic abilities and they raise the ground. The animation here is smooth, and there is only one reason, and that's because of how great Bones produced this animation. They even went as far as to give this anime its own unique style of animation that I wouldn't compare to other works like MHA. It's just so unique, so fluid, so crisp, and because of that, it's so good. This anime also has fantastic and gripping action scenes. Pretty much every episode you'll either get an action scene or a scene with a lot of something similar to it. Action scenes like Aligua's chase through Hellsalem's lot, Zap's fights using his special ability, and Klaus's big battle at the end of the season. They're great because they have so much detail in them that you never feel lost. It's too common for anime like this where you can't tell what's happening in the action sometimes. But this anime never gets too cluttered, and it's nice and clean while still being chaotic and unpredictable. Plus, the fights are just really damn good. I mean, even without the good directing and production, these fights would still be really good because they're laid out and set up really well. This is just another feather in the cap for Blood Blockade Battlefront as far as I'm concerned. My friends, have you ever listened to the Cowboy Bebop score? And yeah, I'm going there. We're going there, we ain't going back. So, Blood Blockade has a score where, instead of just having regular scorey-ass score music, it uses New York jazz and hard bop, just like, you guessed it, Cowboy Bebop. And me being a huge fan of hard bop, jazz, and New York jazz, and a person who played in a jazz bands for 6 months with our opening song, which was freaking Tank from Cowboy Bebop, I mean, I absolutely love this score, and what's really surprising is Taisei Iwasaki's only works are this anime series, but he would also later go on to score Hisune Tomasutan as well after this. Either way, this score is great. From slow jazz ballads with soft, alluring female vocals to hard bop hits, which fit the tone of the city that never sleeps so well. This is a score you can just as easily put on your phone or iPod and listen to, even sing along because they have lyrics, and share with your friends so you can try to pass off being an intellectual because you listen to jazz. And to add on to that, just like Bebop, without the score, this anime isn't as memorable or even enjoyable. It's the other half of Blood Blockade, the bread and a PB&J sandwich, the bass and a pop song, or whatever analogy you want to throw in. It's still doable without it, but it's just not the same thing. English dubs, the farther you go back in time, start to become less well produced. Case in point, 90% of the 90s dubs. But as we see more and more dubs pop up, better tech, better actors, and the same actors getting more experience, we get more and better dubs which are just as, if not as good as their Japanese counterparts. Case in point, Blood Blockade Battlefront, which has an English dub that not only is aesthetically better than the sub as it takes place in New York, but in terms of actual performances is on par with the sub. And I'm not one to think that a sub is just outright good every time either. The sub in this anime is freaking great. And I also realize that some Japanese voice acting is bad, but this one ain't it. Just some of the cast: Daisuke Sakaguchi, one of my personal favorites, Rie Kugimiya. Pretty much, it's not a sub you should scoff off. But as for the dub, it has an all-star cast. Just to name actually quite a bit of people that are in this anime. Aaron Dismuke as Leonardo Watch, Ian Sinclair as Zap, Phil Parsons as Klaus, Shuna Nishimura as Chain, Tia Ballard as Aligua, Megan Emmerich as Mary Macbeth, and Micah Solusad as William Macbeth. It's no secret that I really like dubs and I prefer them many times, but this one's really good. But even then, you can't actually go wrong with either one of these dubs, the Japanese or English. Whatever you want will do the job and deliver. Though personally, I watched it primarily dubbed as it fits the aesthetic of being in New York more. You know, when people are in New York, you probably want them to speak English because that's what makes the most sense. I don't know. That could just be me.
What the hell am I supposed to do? I'm just a regular guy. I don't have any killer skills or powers. My blood's not a weapon. I just have these stupid blue eyes. Ah!
For whatever reason, this anime went under my radar for so long. I actually didn't really know this anime existed, and I am glad Malice in Wonderland recommended it to me via my Discord server. Cheap plug, links in the description. It's a huge breath of fresh air, with awesome battles, interesting characters that don't just get Deus Ex Machina'd a lot, and it's an anime that takes its music seriously from the opening song all the way to the ending song. This is by definition a SeaTactics anime, whatever that means. So, for whatever reason, if you haven't checked this anime out, you need to, especially if you're a fan of Bones or Trigun. So, did you enjoy my review? If you did, tell me down in the comments below, as well with your thoughts on the show. Also join my Discord and click on some of these videos if you find them interesting. Bye bye.